In Daredevil issue 23 from the Chip Zdarsky run, Daredevil and Spider-Man discuss things that make them feel guilty and how to move on from them. To set up context for the issue, Daredevil in an earlier issue killed somebody in the process of stopping a petty robbery. Matt feels extremely guilty about it and turns himself in. This comic takes place 9 days before his trial. The story starts off with Matt talking about Kirsten McDuffel, a love interest of his, who at one point knew he was Daredevil, as did the whole world, and accepted him for it and still loved him. However, a comic event made the world forget who Matt was, including her. Matt here reminisces about that, and says that he still loves her, and that he knows that her forgetting his secret identity is for the best, since it's dangerous for her. It then shows Daredevil with his legal team, which is actually his best friend, Foggy Nelson. What he didn't know is that Foggy brought on Kirsten onto the legal team as well, since she is a really good lawyer. Daredevil is clearly upset about it, and angry at Foggy for doing so since he was trying to keep her away from his life to protect her. Daredevil then tells him that they should continue this tomorrow since he's tired, with Foggy agreeing. Kirsten then leaves the room, leaving Matt and Foggy. For context here, Foggy knows Matt is Daredevil in his previous relationship with Kirsten. Daredevil then swears at Foggy and asks him how he could bring her in since it broke his heart to leave her in the first place. Foggy tries to tell him that he understands, but that Kirsten is one of the best lawyers they have, and that Matt needs all the help he can get at this point. Matt then swings through the city to try and blow off some steam, and mentions how he shouldn't be insulting Foggy like that, and that it hurts him to do that. He then goes on to say that it's just after everything he's been through, seeing Kirsten again is like a punch in the gut for him, and that when he's made peace again with his life as Daredevil, she reminds him of how much it costed him. He then gets a visit from Elektra, who calls him the world's stupidest superhero for turning himself in. Daredevil makes it known that Elektra is the last person he wants to see, and asks her what she wants since he's not in the mood. Elektra tells him that he's always too busy falling on his sword for helping people. Daredevil tells her that that's not what he's doing, and that he turned himself in because it's the right thing to do. Elektra then tells him that many people will die because he will be in prison and can't save them, and tells him that he is using this so-called selflessness to cover for his actual selfishness, it all being a masquerade. It's a really cool conversation, a classic clash of killing versus no killing, since Elektra doesn't mind killing people for justice while Daredevil finds it a sin and hates himself for it. Really shows the two routes of being a vigilante. Anyway, they then talk about previous adventures they've had, with Daredevil telling her how she didn't show up when he needed her. He then tells her to stop pretending to care about people and how she uses and kills people. He then tells her that he still has some good to do before being locked away, and proceeds to leave. Elektra then tells him that she knows of a meeting going down tonight that he could intervene. It then cuts to Foggy and Kirsten meeting up to talk about the trial date. Kirsten mentions how she's never had such a quick trial date before, with Foggy telling her it's likely because the judge doesn't want it to be more of a circus any longer. Kirsten asks Foggy if he thinks they have a shot, with Foggy saying that he's not sure, since it was manslaughter, but that he knows that Daredevil has been in worse situations before. Kirsten then tells Foggy that she didn't want to bring this up, but that if anyone should defend Daredevil, it should be Matt Murdock, and asks Foggy where he is, leaving Foggy confused on how to handle the obvious situation. It then shows a meeting Elektra was talking about, which is between some of the city's biggest criminals, including Wilson Fisk and Hammerhead. Fisk tells him that he's been distracted for too long and that needs to be changed, with someone asking him if he's going to be the Kingpin again, since for context, he is the mayor of the city currently. Fisk mentions to them how he was a fool for thinking that they could all manage their territories before greed took over, with Hammerhead trying to talk back to him, asking him if he's going to do what's actually right. He then complains about getting shot in the head and tries to insult a lady in the room. Kingpin then grabs his head and slams him on the table, mentioning how he still survived with his metal skull. He then continuously bashes his head as he mentions what the deal is now. He tells them that it's clear that they all need a leader, and that while he would be happy to fill that role, he can't because the city needs him now as a mayor. He then mentions how they are all disappointments except for one of the ladies there, Izzy, who stood her ground against the situation earlier on in the universe. Fisk then tells everyone that they will treat her as if she was him, and that she is now the new Kingpin of New York. Izzy shakes his hand and says it's her honor, with Fisk mentioning details to her, until that is, a huge break-in to the room occurs, with Daredevil revealing himself, mentioning how he'll topple any Kingpin, old or new. Fisk tells him that destruction of property may not be the wisest move since he's a man with a trial date. Daredevil then tells him that he's there to let them know that he'll be listening, watching, and even from prison, he's going to make their lives a living hell. One of the criminals in the room tells him that he's all talk and no bite, and that once he's in prison, he'll be meat. Daredevil tells her that that's maybe true, but that he's not alone, with Spider-Man appearing in the corner, looking a little menacing. Daredevil then holds some smoke bombs, and tells him that he spent too many years beating up his goons, the low-level criminals, but that those days are gone now, and that he's coming for them. He pops the smoke bombs and vanishes, putting a little fear and concern into the criminals there. Daredevil and Spider-Man are then outside on a rooftop. Spider-Man tells him that he tried to be dark and menacing, with Daredevil showing his appreciation for it. He tells Spidey that doing anything that makes a criminal second guess their moves is worth it, and that Spidey tearing off a vault door is bound to spook them, with Spider-Man saying it was fun to do. Spidey then asks Daredevil why he reached out to him, since things between them have been kind of weird lately. Just for context, Spider-Man and Daredevil had a falling out about the whole situation a couple issues back, where Daredevil and Spider-Man almost fought each other, where Spider-Man broke into Matt's home and was upset that Matt didn't turn himself in for the killing. Matt, however, tells him that he already is turning himself in. Before the fight ensues, Spider-Man tells him that he'll be back if he's lying, and leaves. Anyways, back to the story. Daredevil tells him that he knows, but goes on to say that all of what they do is difficult, and that there's no clear rulebook, no clear path, and just their sense of right and wrong. He tells Spider-Man he's a good man, and that he didn't want to go to prison without making things right between them. Spider-Man then tells him that he's sorry for the way he's been acting with not giving him the benefit of the doubt. He then takes a long pause, and then tells Daredevil that he accidentally killed someone once in a mission that involved the Wolverine. He threw a wild punch that struck too hard. He tells Daredevil that it was horrible and that he didn't know what to do. He wanted to go home, and that he never told anyone. He then goes on to say how mad he was at himself for not turning himself in and going on like nothing happened, and seeing Daredevil actually turning himself in made him even more furious with himself. Daredevil then gives Spider-Man a hug, giving him some reassurance that he will be fine. Daredevil then monologues for himself, saying how he and Spidey proceeded to talk for hours about their fears, the things they've done, the regrets they've had. They talk about the city they both love and protect to the best of their abilities, even if it's a city that sometimes doesn't love them back. He then mentions how Foggy was right about needing people, and how he needs all the help he can get. He feels blessed and thanks God that he has given him some of the best people he's ever known. I really love the shot between them. One of the best interactions in comics is between Peter and Matt, and I really do love how they have similar ideologies but go about them in different ways, with Daredevil seemingly being harder on himself for his mistakes, but assuring Peter that he's not doing anything wrong. I love these kind of interactions, and I hope we get to see more of these in the future. He then leaves to go back to meet with Foggy, and tells himself that whatever the trial has in store for him, he'll be okay, since he now sees that God put him on a path. His senses then go off, and when he walks into the building, he sees Kirsten right there. Kirsten tells him that she was worried he wouldn't show up, but now that he's here, they can finally work with the legal dream team now fully assembled. The final shot shows someone disguised as Matt Murdock, who will help Daredevil in his trial.